Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of A Mic on the Podium with me, Michael Seal. Before we start, I want to thank my latest Patreon subscriber, Olsey, for his support, and all my other Patreon subscribers for their continued support. This podcast would struggle to continue without them, and my Patreon page has become a great place to learn about and to chat about all aspects of conducting. There'll be more about my Patreon page later on in this episode. Today, I conduct a conversation with a Spanish conductor who spent 7 years as a professional percussionist before becoming the assistant conductor of the CBSO in 2018. He has also been the associate conductor of the Euskadiko Orchestra in the Basque Country and is the principal guest conductor of the Orchestra Sinfonica di Milano in Italy. It's a great pleasure to welcome Jaume Santonja. Jaume, it's been a long time. We think the last time we saw each other was in a bar in Cologne when you were there with the CBSO and I was working. But how are you? Are you keeping well?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I hope you too.
I'm very good, thank you. Very good to see you. My listeners, or the listeners to the podcast, will discover why we know each other later on. But for now, I want to go back and I want to find out whether you come from a musical family, whether music has featured heavily in your childhood, or whether you were just a one-off. How did music come about for you?
But that's a question we usually answer, and I'm somehow happy and proud to always say, no, I'm not coming from a musical family. Not even nearby anyone in my family did music seriously. But at the same time, I'm coming from one of these small villages around Valencia in all our region where the music, and especially in the form of wind bands, is very, very present in our lives. So apparently at a very, very early age, like 3 or 4 years, I went home and I said to my mom that I wanted a drum. I wanted a drum, but I wanted a real drum, not the plastic like toy one. I wanted a real one, an iron drum.
Yeah.
So since then on, the only I have to say is I was always very supportive, but it's true that coming out of the blue. So yeah.
So what do you know why in that area of Spain, wind bands? Is it town bands? Is it the sort of thing that, you could go and join local music, because there were no orchestras, string playing? What was the reason for being bands?
Well, the main reason I'm not a big expert on it right now, but what I can understand is that the wind bands, which they all in a certain way come from a military tradition, but not anymore, evidently. But the thing is that the wind bands are like the original soundtrack for all the parties that happens in a village.
Yeah.
So basically, whatever anything is happening in a village is accompanied by a wind band of a group of people playing outside. Later on has developed also into a wind band also has a music school and they do concerts or even a lot of transcriptions. But their main reason is that it was the music to accompany whatever. The mayor going from the city hall to do something, to go to the church, to leave the church, to accompany any sort of celebration that happens. And that's what I understand. That's why we see and hear wind bands the whole time in the streets here.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how we easily can jump into them, no?
So you get your drum. Thanks, Mum.
I got my drum. My drum. There are even pictures about it. Yes.
And knowing that you were a professional percussionist, when do other instruments join in? Are not just drums, cymbals, triangles, xylophones?
Well, no. So then I remember at the time, like the Spanish education system was quite. It's not as now that it's a little bit more open and sort of individual. It was like very organized, state-like. So we here called it conservatorium even from the beginning. So there was like the starting period, and then there's the mid, and then the professional. So I could only start at the age of 8 years officially going to conservatory, but then were public lessons in the village where I was living. So my parents just wrote me in when I could. So it was after 8 years old was the time we could organize. And then we started to have the original training with solfege instrument once a week, and even a little bit of I will not call it chamber music, but playing together a little bit. So this plus already playing in the youth wind band, because they was already starting to do this a little bit like in the choir in Birmingham. No? They have the professional thing in the symphony hall, but there is a big network of smaller places.
Yes.
So in my time when I was a kid, the wind bands, they all started to do also the youth wind bands. Already from 10 or 11 years old, we could go every Saturday morning and have our rehearsals. So that started to become my routine. And of course, the other instruments arrived because of conservatorium. We started playing cymbals, timpani, xylophone, and everything.
And so it sounds like there's much like you just said in Birmingham, with Birmingham schools, I don't know what it's called these days, but Birmingham schools music service, there is a pyramid of, you join at the lowest level at the youth brass band in your area, and then you might go to a bigger for your province, and then eventually, you'll make your way even to, a national youth orchestra or to go on and study. You did your bachelor's at the Escola Superior de Música de Catalunya in Barcelona.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that was mainly in percussion. Had you any piano skills by this point?
Not piano directly, but we had to actually already do a little bit of complementary piano lessons, like half an hour a week, just before joining the high school in Barcelona. But not really. But it's true that we, as a percussionist, we started already to gamble around with the marimba with 4 sticks and having this little, at least a harmonic thinking.
Yes.
Though technically it didn't really allow us to do much, but it's true that it really opens up. It's something I realized and discovered later on, no? That even people which were very, very advanced in their instruments, but when you play your trumpet only, and somehow you still have this vision and this thinking on monodic, no? And a good thing of percussion I could discover later on is that we had somehow this very basic thing, but when you enter the world of keyboards, suddenly harmony and 2 hands, the claves and everything, it starts to open up, no? And that was something very positive for me in the long run. Now I realize.
Even if you're playing a marimba piece with sort of 3 sticks in each hand, and you're doing rolling and rippling or whatever it is, you're dealing with harmony, you're dealing with bass clef, you're dealing with treble clef.
And we do it actually from a quite early age, which I discovered it was very, very, very good to do.
So we haven't mentioned the C word yet, and I'm assuming you're going to meet somebody who's conducting you way back from the village band. But by the time you get to high school, and you're doing your bachelor's in Barcelona, you're now meeting better quality conductors. Was it something you were ever interested in early on, or at this stage have you got the blinkers on like a racehorse and you're thinking, I want to be a percussionist professionally? Where were you at this stage?
No, I have to actually say that one of the very good things of this wind band living in the village, it's like that we had this studying at the conservatorium, like the official thing, but finally was the weekend life. This Saturday rehearsals plus going with the wind band playing to the next village for the party, and we stayed the whole evening with friends and playing around. That had many good things, like out of boringness, you take the instruments of your colleagues just to try. Okay, I give you my drum and you give me your trumpet, and I try out a little bit how this works. These things open your mind, and then there was also this the same aspect in the composing, conducting. One playing around just for fun could write 4 lines at home and bring it Saturday to rehearsal, and the colleagues will play it for you, and maybe you will even conduct a little bit. And I remember something very, very important we did was we made a percussion ensemble also, which I was founder. We founded with four friends, and we asked a friend to become the conductor because we didn't really know how to play for people alone. But there I was a little bit interested already in writing music just for fun. I mean, not really to become a conductor, but was that investigating and playing with music in a totally naive way. but at the same time we were doing it. No, there was no
Mm.
one who would say, "Oh, that's not good enough," or "No." We just went there. We could play, and that's it was a very friendly or very amicable way to be involved with music.
Yeah.
But later on, when I started the bachelor and the real life, I realized that was already very difficult enough to become a professional player. So then I abandoned these things a little bit. But I have to say that until 17, 18-year old, I, I I really was very interested on everything. We
Yeah.
could write music for a small piece for the wind band or a small overture because our friends wanted to do something, and we could play it, even conduct it without any learning before. Now I realize how brave we were, no, how
Yeah.
young at the same
Yes.
time. Because yeah, I do this, and but the good thing of the society here is that they encourage you for
Yeah.
all these things, that you will not receive like, that's not good, or no. It's like, oh, good, keep going. If you like it one time, and anyone can come to the wind band. Still nowadays, I know I have friends who go to the wind band, say, look, I just wrote this thing at home, and yeah, I mean, if it's not good music, we'll play it once and that's it. You're
Yeah.
happy you heard it, and then you go home. But sometimes you discover people who really made something nice, and it keeps sounding on the street sometimes, no? So that was very positive for me. And then Barcelona became a little bit like, okay, if I want to be professional, I need to study, do my hours. And then I also discovered the youth orchestras, and
Yeah.
and and the initial thought of becoming a soloist and a virtuoso was more towards like, oh, I like the orchestra, I like everything what happens here, the repertoire, the people, the environment, even the traveling,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
being able to do some touring. So from a quite early age, I got into this. I think it still exists, the Verbier Festival Youth Orchestra
Yes.
in Switzerland, and that was really a turning point because I was a full summer there with many people from America, actually from I think the teachers and the coaches of the youth orchestra were from the Met, from the Metropolitan Opera,
Yeah.
and in a summer we played with 5 or 6 conductors, 5 or 6 different programs, all very intensive, and then I remember coming back home and say, okay, I want the orchestra to be my work, no,
Yeah.
or
Your
at least
life.
try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember going to my teacher and say, so what do I have to do to get a position, no? And they
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, practice, practice, and practice.
Indeed. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with my own life until a point I'm about to come to. But, the first piece I ever conducted was something I wrote myself.
Okay.
I realized quite early on that I wasn't interested in doing solo stuff. I wasn't interested in Paganini, Wieniawski, Sarasate. I wanted to be an orchestral violinist. I love the camaraderie of orchestras. I love the orchestral sound. Where we differ is that I stayed in my country to study. You
Yeah.
left and went to Amsterdam and Antwerp.
Yes.
How or why or how come?
Well, it's special also to say because it's been all through percussion,
Yeah,
but at the same time, even now, because the question of why and how do you become a conductor, it also comes along sometimes. But I have to say that even already when I was still at home, not even in Barcelona yet, there was this first teacher of mine in my village who knew a very special teacher who lived in Alicante, in the city. I'm coming from a small village, like 1 hour away from the city,
yeah,
and this person was like a very prominent musician who had been already traveling internationally, who was also himself a conductor, but one of the really main characters in percussion music, not only around but in Spain country.
yeah,
And this guy had developed a special system to work with young people. So he called many of his pupils to bring in like young students from wherever they come, just to try to. And I remember from a very early age, my father driving me to Alicante to meet this man. He was called Iborra, a very famous teacher. And I don't know, we were maybe two or three people, or or three kids from abroad, from around, that we didn't really know each other, but we were there one afternoon every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And this very important person would give us free lessons just because he wanted to. And I remember, because it was an older man talking to really little boys, but very seriously about music. I remember things like playing one chord in the marimba, just one time, C major, and he would ask us to play it and think about it, but for at least 2 or 3 minutes. And of course, you as a kid, you're like, even I remember my father was there watching the lesson, and he did not have a clue. And in the car back, it's like, do you want to go back? Are you happy with this? And because he thought, I don't know, this is, but in a way, yeah, our lessons were always fine. But this person was really treating us as a older or grown up people, and it really made changes in our head. And then he was recording us with video cameras, and already analyzing our position, our expressivity in the body, things that you will not, even later on, I will not see it later on in my studies. No, that really new way, or very 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 intense. So that I always thought that this opened my mind a little bit, also to understand people when they talk about more intellectual things, not only practical.
Yes.
Yeah. And funny enough, he will be also the teacher of the people I was going to study in Barcelona. And at the same time in Barcelona, I met the teachers would become my teachers in Amsterdam, because I exactly don't know why, but there was always a big connection between the Dutch percussion school and Spain.
Oh, wow.
So into the percussion world, there were like the American French school and the German. It was like and basically, one of the big differences is like the position of the timpani.
Right. Yes.
Where do we have the low sound or the high?
Yeah, the low note on the left in the UK.
On the left, and the right for the German.
For the Germans,
but somehow the Dutch, they had their specific way, which have similar mix of both, but also their own thing.
Yeah.
And it starts from the grip, the way they grip the timpani sticks, but also the way they use instruments, and particularly instrumental, not the timpani, but the percussion instruments, because of they playing in concertgebouw, which is a hall so special.
Yes.
They had to adapt their technique to a very loud and delicate hall.
Yes.
So in a way, this is not a big school, but this is what they call the Dutch school. And apparently they were young Spanish teachers who many years ago decided to travel to Amsterdam, and since then this became like a big chain of communication.
Wow.
So actually, when I was in Barcelona playing with one of these regional youth orchestras, we got as a coach, percussion coach, who will become my percussion teacher, which is now a main conductor, Gustavo Jimeno.
Yes.
So Gustavo Jimeno is from Valencia, like me. Is someone I met when I was a little kid in summer courses for percussion, blah blah. I remember there's a very funny anecdote he might still remember, because I know he's told it around it. I think I went to that percussion summer course with a small piece of percussion I made for this ensemble. I mentioned, handwrite it with mistakes and everything, and I presented it to Gustavo, because was the famous teacher there around, and he was like, "Oh, great, very nice," and he took it on. I think he still has it somewhere on. But it's also funny to see that so now I realize that my teachers, they were all, in a way, also very wide open musicians, not only towards percussion, but really the teaching was also very musically focused in the wide range. So I end up going to Amsterdam because of Gustavo and the rest of the teachers there, because it was my contact point, to do my master's in orchestral percussion, to really try to focus my career into getting a job.
Yeah.
And after that is when I finished the masters, is when I did like intensively a lot of auditions. I end up having my job in Antwerp and my trial in Birmingham.
Of course, yes, I remember that very well. I was going to bring that up. But so, I mean, just for those who don't know, and I'm sure Sarah Bruce, my manager, has asked Gustavo to come on the podcast. I can't remember why we haven't got him on yet, but maybe you can give him a dig. But he was he was a percussionist in the Concertgebouw Orchestra, wasn't he?
Yes.
As well as obviously teaching you before he became a conductor. A very similar route to yourself, who, you went and worked, let me look at my notebook, for 7 years as principal percussion of the Antwerp Symphony Orchestra. Yes. I wonder whether you've chatted to Gustavo at all about your similar journeys and about the sort of conductors you encountered whilst doing your job in the two orchestras, you in Antwerp, him in Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, because those, I remember I did 22 years playing in the CBSO, I saw them all pretty much, and some of them really informed how I became a conductor, and in a good way and a bad way, if you know what I mean. The bad ones actually taught me more than the good ones. What can you remember of your 7 years as a percussionist, thinking about conducting then, because of course you were also studying in a Masters of Conducting as well. So what were your experiences?
So as you say, we have that privileged place, and especially we do that, even me more than you, because you as a violinist, you tend to be very busy normally. But we percussionists even have the time to really analyze and see what happens in the rehearsal, and we have the time even to really take attention to all that. And as you said, we see everything, and something very nice also of working in Antwerp and being in the middle of Europe, and is that not only in your orchestra, but I could at the time go several times to Birmingham to play with Andries, and I was extra playing with the Rotterdam Philharmonic, with the Concertgebouw itself, and being able to see so many conductors in so many different repertoires and also in different orchestras, and to see exactly what you say, how well can it go, and also how bad can or not bad, because it's not about being good or bad. But we were having some chat last week in Italy with some friends after concert, and finally one of my premises now when I'm doing the job is I really want to treat people, musicians, as I remember I wanted a conductor treated me.
Indeed.
When I was being better or worse artist, we all have our limits and our things and our ideas. You can like this, that, or more, but the way you treat the people is very important.
Yeah.
Because many people is like, but maybe if you will get a little bit more. No. I mean, we have to understand everyone sitting in the orchestra is so well prepared. They know so much, and it's maybe many years ago was another story, but nowadays we have to admit most of them might know more than at least me in that moment, so that's something you learn. Seeing people is like, no way. I mean, I remember being on the job and say, no, we cannot go that way. No, you will never engage me as an artist talking to me like that.
Yes.
And at the same time, to also at the same time see when somebody does a great job, to see how your orchestra, which you know very well, can make such a difference. Like, are we the same group of people? Are we the same people of last week playing this concert right now? Because and it's,
well, you would have experienced it not only in Antwerp, but you would have experienced it when you trialed in Birmingham, when you would have probably trialed for a conductor who wasn't Andris Nelsons, and then you played with the CBSO when Andris Nelsons was there. And we all knew that there was a massive, huge difference. God knows why. I mean, there's this chemistry that happens.
Yes.
We're going to come back to Birmingham again, obviously, in our chat. But before we leave Antwerp, you studied conducting at the Royal Conservatory of Antwerp. Who was your teacher, and what sort of teacher were they? I've asked this question of most people. I mean, unless it's a name I know. But
Yes.
were they a stick technician? Were they a score study person, or were they a overall?
Well, I'll explain it because it's also in a way a funny story. Well, it's not funny. It's what it is. But
Yeah,
many, when you suddenly start to have some activity, there is this interested people in conducting who calls you, hey, so how you've done this? What do you think I should do for? And it's like sometimes I say I'm not the right person to answer this question because I didn't do what I thought it had to be the right thing. But I remember being in Antwerp already for I passed my trial. I was 2-3 years in the orchestra already, settled in my job. I knew how everything works. And then I thought, okay, now, then I realized now it's like the moment to start. And not only because that, but I remember a very key moment also. Every summer I came back to Spain with my family for holiday, blah, blah. And I used to go to conducting summer lessons, a very prominent conductor near of my region, which is mainly working with wind bands, but it's an excellent artist and someone who knows the symphonic repertoire also upside down, and a very, very interesting person. And I always like to go to those courses just to be there, but always in a very holiday mood.
Yeah.
So I remember once that last one of those summers I was there, but now we did a small concert afterwards with the little pieces we work with an amateur wind band. And I remember a little chat with the teacher, and she said, Jaume, you can do this well, but just do it. Inscribe yourself in a school, study, and do it properly.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing now, coming here, blah blah blah. It's really not giving you anything.
You were playing at it rather than taking it seriously.
So and it actually it went good because then I thought it's true because I want to do it. But in a way, it was a small laziness in my back there, like I'm doing my job, I'm doing my thing. But then I remember I arrived to Antwerp in September and I said, okay, I inscribed myself, I go to school. And the reality is that I didn't have any other option than studying in Antwerp because I had this full-time job, a small daughter in the way, and my wife was also working there full-time. So I could not even think of going somewhere else to study. So I went to school, said, well, hello, I come here. But in a way, I think I was quite lucky because they were in the time like 2 people teaching conducting. One was the main conductor for, let's say, orchestra. But talking with friends and reading some information, they told me there was a very, very prominent wind band department for conducting, which they told me was very well organized with very good lessons, also orchestration teachers. And so after seeing the stuff, I inscribed myself. So I ended up having 2 teachers. The main teacher for wind band music, which was called Dirk Brosset. Sadly,
I know Dirk.
He died last. He was dead. I think he died last year or something from brain cancer. Sadly. But I started. So he was like my main teacher because I inscribed in a master's for wind band conducting, and at the same time I inscribed to my extra hours with the conductor, the orchestra conductor teacher, because at the time they didn't have the masters. Right. And because I already had my bachelor and my master's in Amsterdam, I had to do masters only.
Yes.
Or something like that. I don't know how, but officially that was the thing. But the combination of the 2 was great because Dirk used to be the principal piccolo player of Brussels Philharmonic. So it's really another person who really knew the repertoire ups and down, really someone who was conducting a lot of amateur symphony orchestras in Belgium also. And then we had the other teacher, which is called Ivo Venkov. And Ivo Venkov is a quite special person also, which I discovered has an amazing CV when I arrived there, because I think it's originally coming from Bulgaria. But he was the 2nd prize winner when Dudamel won the job in Bamberg. And then he was also the 1st prize winner at the Solti competition.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my God. But I don't know, sometimes, I mean, you never know the circumstances of every person, blah, blah. But suddenly I encountered someone who did a lot of competitions who had through all the Russian way of studying conducting. But it's true that I don't think his passion was really to be teaching in a school like that, because you could see that his department was not as developed as maybe one would like.
Yeah.
But his lessons were amazing. I
Yeah.
remember going there, and we didn't need anything, not even a CD player. We just went there with the scores. It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? And this and that and blah blah. No, and competition. And he knew all the repertoire by heart, all the standard things for competitions and that. And you know, when I did that competition, this is what happened, and you have to think on that and that. And then we at the same time we had the other teacher, Derek Brosset, who had his all very settled way of studying slowly and score studying, marking things. We had a big wind band in school to do the practices and the things. So it ended up being a quite complete education together with my activity as a professional player.
Yeah, of course. Because that's the extra teacher that I always say that I had. You know that also, you know, I've had my teachers and my mentors, but the playing in the orchestra and talking to your colleagues is a you know, it's a lesson that people would pay for.
Yes. And at the same time, I could also see, I mean, when I really started studying conducting, I think I was 27 or 28 years old. I mean, I was already becoming a father and a person with a job. I mean, it's not the same as if you arrive to the same setting when you are 17 or 18, that you might need a little bit more guidance, more basics to get into your body, no? To maybe someone could get lost. But in that situation, for me, it was great. At the same time, I could not choose any other thing. But thinking about it, it's like, okay, I was pretty lucky, I have to say, and I could prepare for some competitions, auditions, and things. But still, it was my hobby. The idea is, okay, I do my job. I try to do my things. Assistances here and there, as we all do, right? It's still a hobby.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Birmingham, because
yes.
I remember conducting the orchestra and you playing in it on trial.
Yes, me too.
well, you're smiling, so I couldn't have been that bad. But I remember.
No, but I tell you why I smiled, because I think what your concert, I remember a situation I never encountered in my life, because as you said, I studied in Spain and Holland, working in Belgium, but I heard about the English system and everything, but I never really studied in the English system, and I didn't know exactly how it worked. And I remember one of the weeks I was there doing a program with Nelson's, and I think we did a full concert with John Williams music. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I remember you saying things like top and tail, and all my all my colleagues were looking to my face and laughing. And I was like, and I remember we didn't play the full pieces, because of course you all knew this. It was John Williams standard stuff, but I was reading in the concert, and I never did that in my life. I remember I lost 2 years of my of living and just passing pages, and all the friends around, they were laughing so much, and I enjoyed the concert a lot, but I was not expecting the situation. That's why I was laughing.
Well, for those listeners who are not based in the UK or are not immersed in the classical music world, often we will do a John Williams concert, let's say on a Friday night in Birmingham. Occasionally, we would do that on 1 3-hour rehearsal on the day, and there are pieces in there that are very, very difficult, and there are other pieces in there that the orchestra will have played a boatload of times. So, for instance, I would probably have started Star Wars, done a couple of the tempo changes, and then closed the score and moved on to the next one. And the same with Superman. But my preferred modus operandi, and I know that with the CBSO we do this, is to have a rehearsal day the day before, and then on the day of the concert I will only rehearse for an hour, because playing that music once in a day is more than enough. It's killing for the lips, it's killing for the vibrato and the bowing arms, and so. But yeah, that's why Jaume was laughing, because occasionally we do some of those where it's all on no rehearsal, and you do the top of the piece and the tail of the piece, hence top and tailing. But the reason for talking about that is that I remember you being on trial, but then I remember in 2018 when the assistant conductor job came up after Jonathan Bloxham had finished, hearing that, that you'd been given the job as assistant conductor with the CBSO, which was, I don't know, a gap of, 4 or 5 years between you playing and me conducting, and then you becoming the assistant conductor. I remember thinking, I didn't even know he did conduct. I didn't even know he was learning.
Well, I think it was maybe a little bit more. So from the 11 to the 18, the 6 or 7 years that I was working in. No, but it's so I remember the first time, like before getting the position, like a couple of years, I think when Jonathan Bloxham got the job, the orchestra already made like an announcement for people to apply. And I remember back then was just my beginning studying conducting. And I thought, well, I know the orchestra, I know how good they are. Is like I cannot go there but in a way it was like a great motivation to see that the orchestra was opening these positions and things, because especially it's such in a high class orchestra like this, which from inside, somehow the connection is bigger, and the motivation, at least for me, was bigger. It's like, wow, that's a goal. And a couple of years after, the same opening came again. I was like, wow, after now I really have to try. I already had my small master classes and competitions, so I had better materials in terms of video and stuff. And funnily enough, they organized this masterclass competition very nicely, and I was accepted for it. So I was like, boom. And I remember I had a funny situation at my work that they didn't allow me to a free week to go there. And I was like, oh my God, what can I do now? And I finally talked with my boss back then, a very, very great guy. And I said, look, I want to do things well. I don't want to call you and say I'm sick when I'm not sick. So please, let's find a solution to do this well, because I want the orchestra to hire someone good just to cover me, and I want to easily go to my place and do what I have to do. And he was very, very, very nice and open back then, and say, okay. He said, but he told me, but get the job. I was like, okay, I'll try.
And I'm just going to butt in and say that between the set of auditions for Jonathan's job, because I've interviewed Jonathan, and then when you applied for the assistant conductor job, there'd been a change in music director. It had gone from Andres to Mirga, Gradually Tila, and the process had changed. So for Jonathan's job, it was anybody could apply. We whittled it down from 201 down to 8. There was 8 in the morning, all conducted 2 pianos. Then we cut that down to 4, and then 4 conducted the orchestra. And at the end of the day, we chose
a proper audition process.
Yeah. Whereas with yours was a set of masterclasses over 2 or 3 days with Johanna Schleffli, who was Mirga's teacher.
I explained the process to actually several organizations since then, because I personally, not because I got a job, but even talking with my colleagues, we all found it very nice, because originally it was a masterclass. So we all the people around there got something. We got the teaching from Schleffli. We had lessons with him, with the small ensemble, with pianos. And then eventually the last part of the 3-4 days was the small competition thing with the orchestra. But everybody went home knowing we all learned something. We all get something. We all get to conduct the CBSO in a way. So, and I thought it was very, very positive, because sometimes when we enter this competition thing, also even in between us, between the same contenders, it's always a little bit, there's some tension on it, which in a way it didn't happen then, because we left there and we left and we didn't know anything. I was only a couple of days after that I got a call from Mirga saying, well, we've talked about it and we decided to offer you this.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I think I agree. I think I agree with you, because the previous way, I'm sure the other 7 who didn't get the job could ask for feedback, and I'm sure they were given feedback. But there's a brutality to it. It feels like a competition. Whereas it sounds like, you'd had 2 or 3 days of really good teaching and experiences with both Johanna Schleffli and with Mirga. And then at the end of that, there was a process which, at the
Yes,
end of even when you all left and nobody knew who got the job, there was no sort of brutality about it. You could probably all go for a beer afterwards, and
we did. We
so
all did have
exactly, yeah,
we had a beautiful dinner afterwards and everything, and
yeah,
we all went home happy.
yeah,
And that, I think that's a very nice way of organizing a selection
yeah.
if you have the possibilities, no?
So you
And yes,
become the assistant conductor, and
and then
again there
yeah,
is again there is a similarity in the fact that the other two, Jonathan Bloxham and also Alpesh Chauhan, they had never played with the orchestra. I, who was the first one,
you
spent
did,
22 years
yeah,
in the orchestra, 9 of which as assistant or associate, and you'd been on trial for the orchestra for quite a lengthy period of time. So you'd been in it, and then you had to stand in front of it.
yes.
Admittedly, you hadn't ever had a job, but still, there is a big similarity. So how did you find that? How did you find the 2 years, and did you find it easier to get information from people, ask to get them to give you feedback because you'd played with the orchestra? Do you think, or not?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you're ready, because during the trial time you don't know everybody, but there is
Yeah,
always these key persons in the orchestra, and especially in Birmingham, where there's these very special individuals that you really connect with, and they are very friendly, very open, and they were. And my question is like, will they remember me? I said, I mean, because I obviously remember them. For me,
yes,
it's like going to Birmingham is something big, something it stays with me, but you never know. I mean,
mm,
the people might be doing their job, and it for us was a surprise to see that actually many people remembered me from the time playing, and they were all very friendly, which in a way is good, but it increases the pressure we have, and also you want to do well for your friends, and you want to show them you are not there because so it's just because you can do it well. But it's been very nice, I have to say. The change was heavy because I was coming, as I said, from being a really an orchestral player with a little bit of education, but the shock, the change to the position was massive because I had to change life,
yeah,
really entirely life. We suddenly left job. My orchestra only gave me 1 year. They hold my position only 1 year, but
yeah,
I had 2 years contract in Birmingham, so I had to say, okay, I put away my job. I tried to do the other thing. We moved back with my family and daughter to Spain. No jobs, any of us, but so it was really a big change, not only in the professional life, but in the real life also.
yes,
Which I think I could only assimilate it during COVID times.
yeah,
Until COVID, I was sort of living in a perpetual shock, in a small shock. So I was doing things, but I have to admit that the COVID time was in a way necessary for me to settle down all what happened,
mm, mm,
and because yeah, suddenly I remember having tons of books in my desk to go in Birmingham and be ready. And of course, you want to know it as good as you can, but at the same time, you have to accept you cannot know them perfectly
no,
because
no,
it's
no,
just
no,
there is no physical time to really put all this music into even because you say no, but that symphony I played it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you played it. Has nothing to be that with knowing the score and being able to jump on stage and do something.
and also
So
if
it
you're
was
assisting somebody like Mirga, yes, you've got to know the score to a certain degree, but you're going to sit through 2 or 3 days rehearsal, and if you're going to go on tour with the orchestra, which I'm sure you did as well, you're going to
Mhm.
go sit through lots and lots of rehearsals, many performances. And should you need to jump in, you're going to have to mimic to some degree what Mirgo's been
What you
doing,
yeah, because
and
if
so
not, it's going to be a disaster.
yeah, you can't necessarily learn it in your own way with your own stamp on it because you are assisting somebody. Um, that's a very important thing to say. You just mentioned COVID, and before I pressed record, you rightly reminded me that actually your final things in Birmingham were cancelled due to COVID coming.
Yeah, so the
Um,
last 6 months were off, and actually with many exciting things for me were coming. But yeah,
Yeah.
at the same time, I got my second child just before COVID, and I was quite worried about not being home and everything. So I have to also admit that I enjoyed my time at home. I could be
Yeah.
with them the whole time, and you know, let's not complain.
And
Don't
whilst we're
complain.
in COVID times, the next time I see you was on my computer screen when I watched, as I always try to do, the
Oh yes,
Concertgebouw masterclass
yes.
with Ivan Fischer. And I've spoken to others who appeared in those masterclasses, either with Fischer or with Daniele Gatti, about that experience. How was it? And was it especially different because it was during COVID time? You know, I'm assuming that, you know, with the ones with Gatti, they were having a lot of private time with Gatti and with members of the orchestra, getting feedback, getting lessons, getting
Hmm.
piano classes. I'm assuming it was a bit different with Ivan Fischer because it was it November, December 2020 when the first time anything
No,
opened up?
it was July. It was
Oh,
July.
wow. Okay, right.
I have. I mean, at least for me, it was very different. I mean, I don't know how was the masterclass normal, but I have to admit, for me, it was difficult because it was really the first activity I could do
Yeah.
related to my job since the big lockdown. Which
Yes.
even so, just before the big lockdown, we were going on tour with Birmingham. We were actually heading to the airport, and then concerts started to cancel. And I remember Stephen Maddock, who said to me, just take a plane and go back home because this doesn't look good.
No.
And I remember taking one of the last planes I could take to leave the UK to arrive in Spain to be with my family.
Yeah.
And when just arriving home, they called us to say we have to make tests because people was positive in our surroundings.
Yeah.
Very, very stressful, everything. Since that moment, it was the big lockdown in Spain, which we could not even leave our houses, even if we live in the countryside,
Yeah.
for more than 3 months.
Yeah.
So I could at the end get that one of the first flights who left Spain to go to Amsterdam with a mask, with everything, with the I don't think no, there were no tests yet because there were no well, yeah, we had tests but no vaccines or anything.
No. No.
And then the letters, but I remember having that stress in the body, like, okay, now I'm leaving my place for the first time. We don't know the plane, don't touch anything, the master class. And then we arrived there. And the day after, I was in the spot of the conductor in Concertgebouw with the orchestra massively spread out
Yes. Yeah.
until the end of the walls.
Yeah.
Everything full of cameras, and you are like, okay, what's happening here? Wait, let's wait a moment. Let's wait a moment. So, but after that, it was amazing. Also, for the fact that we were all in that small hotel near there with Maestro Fischer, which was very, very, very open. When we were not in the actual lessons, actually, we were chatting all together and speaking about his Budapest orchestra and all his ideas. And we were all together and with distance, but chatting. And it was very nice. And we had, as you said, a lot of time of feedback with players, with many different players from the orchestra, very serious feedback and severe also, which in a way is what we need. No, it's of course wonderful, bravo, but this boom, look at this, try to do that, no? And there were very, very intense 3 days, which I'm happy in a way I could get, go through this first stressful day and sort of develop through the masterclass. But it was stressful, or at least I remember living it very, very in a very special way because the situation wasn't ordinary.
No,
No.
not in any respect. I mean, what it was, you know, I'd forgotten it was as early as July 2020, which, you know, most places were pretty much still locked down.
Yes,
to some degree.
we had another
Yeah.
After that.
There were more.
Lockdown.
There were more. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in our world, in the classical music world, it was one of the first things that you could watch. You could see.
So many people watch it.
Yeah, but for you, there's an extra stress of the fact that, you know, this thing's going out live on Facebook or live on YouTube. There's that stress, but then there's also the flip side to that stress, which is the way I like to live my life, is always turn your head around 180 degrees because there's a positive to any negative. Positive being, there couldn't be a bigger shop window for your conducting career than doing that then. You know, they literally couldn't, because there was nothing else going on. And that was the first time It was the first thing that anybody in the classical music world could sit and watch live, pretty much. Other
Yes.
than, there were some live streams from orchestras who were sitting apart from each other, and there were digital things going on. People were putting up concerts. I did one with the CBSO, which we filmed and then put up online. But this was a big live thing. It's a big shop window for your career.
It was.
And I think you did wonderfully well, because I watched all 3 days and was rooting for you each time you stood up. But yeah, I think for you it must have been a good time to do that.
I remember afterwards, like everybody I met around, I saw the masterclass, and I even got some opportunities out there because I assume because they did see that, and of course that puts you in the map, a little bit. So. But I remember also the stress to think, wow, it will not happen. It will be cancelled, and finally the opportunity will be gone, and another COVID problem, blah blah. But as I said, as Rafa Nadal says always, it not only rains for me, but rains for everybody. So
good quote. I like that.
That's a good way. It's not only raining for me; it's raining for everybody. So.
The 11th question, which I know you've listened to a few episodes a while back, maybe, but you've listened to a few episodes, and it's about score study. Do you use piano skills? Do you sit there with your inner ear? Are you somebody who listens to recordings? And of course, the important geeky question: red, blue, black, scribblings and markings, or nothing at all? How do you go about learning and marking your scores, Jaume?
It's been developing a little bit, and I always think I arrived to my way, but you always put some new skills inside. It's always adapting, but I sort of have now my system. So technically wise, I try to use the piano. I play a little bit, but I always think, man, I should have learned very well piano. But anyway, I do use it, especially for harmonic studying and organizing things. It's something I enjoy, at least to have a real contact with an instrument. And if not, I do study with my vibraphone at home sometimes to really touch the music, because something it's dangerous about us is to somehow leave the real music making away. And I try to avoid that, to touch it as much as I can. And then marking, I try to do all what you say, listening music, but at the beginning, less at the end. Try to find versions which in a way ring in the way I also think the music should go. Sometimes it's funny to discover versions that you think, that it is really as I will do it. But it's really fantastic. I like it. But sometimes it's also funny to discover there is no recordings that they really choke with, which have a clash with the way I will do it. And it's like, whoa, it's really very different to what I could think about something.
I always say that I think I really know and love a score when I don't think there's any recording that can replicate what I really want. There may be a corner here, or a chord there, or a balance there, or or that particular tempo, but the whole thing, no, definitely not.
That's the thing why we have to get away of the recordings at the last, or I think I try to get away of the recordings in the days previous to conduct, because in a way I adapt my mind to what I hear, no? So it's better to at certain point say, okay, enough, and now
absolutely
reproduce my way in the head, because if not, it's difficult, of course. And then marking, yes, colors. I use red and blue and black. And in opera, everything.
Every color possible. Yeah. To help you know who's singing when.
Yeah, so I try to, but I don't use it like blue for one thing or red for the other. Somehow I use both to make differences with things. Right. But yes, crescendo and diminuendo is always red and blue, up and down. But the rest, I don't know, depends. Sometimes if I want to mark that the certain line or certain instrument is really the priority, then it's red and big. But if not, it could be blue with things. But yes, I really have to work I like to work a lot on my scores. Yeah, it makes me feel it makes me feel in peace.
I always say, and have said many times, the marking and the process of marking up a score helps me learn the music I think if I just stood up there and I hadn't written anything in, I would definitely not know it as much as if I'd spent the time in this very room with my red, blue, and black pencils and doing my research and listening to some recordings and all of that. You know, it helps me learn it so much. So, yeah, we all have our own system, but as long as it works, that's fine.
Isn't it also good when I like when I meet colleagues on the road or something, I usually try to ask, can you show me score just to see what you do. And it's very comforting when you see that people that's similar to you. It's like, okay, I'm not in the wrong path then.
No, I'm not an imposter after all. What would you do if an orchestral player spoke to you aggressively, or even tried to take over the rehearsal? How would you react if a soloist had a memory slip and needed your assistance? In recent weeks, I've started a new series on my Patreon page called What Would You Do in This Situation?, where topics like these are discussed using real-life encounters. It started a lot of discussion and is proving hugely popular with my subscribers. Subscribing is very easy, and you'll gain access to articles, tour diaries, over 30 hours of interviews and bonus mini-episodes, as well as much more. If you subscribe annually, you'll get a discount, and a further discount if you're a student. All of this can be found at patreon.com/a mic on the podium, and from just £5 a month you can gain access to this ever-growing resource on conductors and conducting. That's patreon.com. Details and links to the page are in the show notes attached to this episode. Now, the all-important 10 questions with my guest, Jaume Santonja. Jaume, it is time for the 10 questions. And as you will know, I always start with the same two. What sound or noise do you love, and what sound or noise do you hate?
I do hate the sound of my how do you say, the alarm clock in the morning. I don't like it. And a sound I like a lot is the fireworks.
Fireworks?
With distance, but I like the fireworks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're working in especially Italy. Every time I've been there on a holiday, you can't go an evening without somebody letting off a barrage of fireworks from a mountaintop village or something. And then Spain's much the same, isn't it?
It's much the same. The sound and the smell also, and you can smell a little bit that.
Yeah, the cordite. Yeah, but I suppose what it subliminally means is that you know that somebody's having a great time somewhere. There's a party going on.
Also the fact that there is also like a small hidden code. Even here in my village, there is a Valencia fan club, so they support the football, the regional football team. So if Valencia makes a goal, they bring one, and if they lose at the end of the match, they do it twice. So there is a small code system. We all know what happens, even from far away. So it's great.
Oh, that's brilliant! That's brilliant. Question 3 is: if you had 24 hours free, what would you spend it doing?
Yeah, I put the 2 options. So there's the 24 hours alone and abroad, let's say, on work. And I really like tourism, walk around and try to see the city. And if I can jump into some locals and speak and see, and meet unknown people, I would love to do that. Yeah. And then if I'm at home and with the family around, a day in the mountain. What will be for us a normal Sunday, but it's also nice to have it sometimes in the middle of the week, because you just have one day free, which is going in the mountain and have a little lunch with a lot of family and playing around with no stress.
Sounds great to me. No stress sounds really good. Number 4 is: can you name your favorite conductor or conductors of yesteryear?
Oh, different ones. No, I was having a small list, and there are actually so many. So maybe from older times, I wrote, of course, about Maris Janssons, which was not that so long ago, but I remember also from seeing him from nearby in Amsterdam, playing with him and watching many of his rehearsals, and it was really something very inspiring. I never met Bernstein, but it's a figure you cannot hate. Whether you will do the same or not. And of course, Karajan. It's because in a way it's. Then I wrote that I think I'm quite sure I will have loved Mahler conducting. I'm quite sure of that, but I will never know. Someone who makes a connection, no, which is a conductor from today, but also from yesterday, is Blomstedt. Is one of the leading figures. I lately, everything he does is really fantastic, fantastic. Even the recordings, I hear them, it's like wow.
Well,
I totally agree.
As you say, he is an answer to question 5, a favourite current conductor, but he's also 95 and has been conducting for, God knows how many years. Do you have any others as answer to question 5, or are you happy sticking with Blomstedt?
No, I'm happy with Blomstedt, and I'm also from a big reference, Rattle, of course, and being in Birmingham and being next to him and nearby, it was one of the really most inspiring things I ever had. Rattle. I also had the luck to play a lot with Yannick Negetsegan in Rotterdam when he started his tenure there with the orchestra. I could play many of his concerts, and I love this kind of the motivator conductor as Nelson's does, which is not only technically, but this other aspect of bringing the orchestra to do the best and really be extremely motivated every time. It's the kind of people that really vibrates with me.
Number 6, what is the hardest work you've ever conducted?
It might not be the hardest one for somebody else, but because the several situations I had, and not only once, but I would say for now in my career, Petrushka, Stravinsky. I had to do it in a different settings, in a different complications. The first one was difficult because it was new. The second time was difficult because it was jumping. Another time I had to do it in COVID in an open air with microphones, total chaos. And I remember being very stressful. All day went quite okay finally, but I really think it's a difficult work.
It is. It is. And I did it recently at the Conservatoire in Birmingham, and we had lots of rehearsal on purpose because there were 3 masters conductors there, and I wanted to give them all a chance to conduct as much of it as possible, at least once. Because, the first time I conducted it was with the CBSO in a family concert or a school's concert or something, which is frightening. I've then conducted it since with the London Philharmonic in a school's concert and then on with the Conservatoire. So I think, I now have a grasp of it. But I remember that first time being frightened to death. So I gave the master's students a chance to conduct it. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, it's still bloody hard. Tempo relationships, tempo, beat patterns. It's tough. And I actually, just to add to that, they wanted me to do the original version, and I refused. I said, "I'm sorry, I've conducted the 47 version, and I'm not willing to learn. I'm not willing to learn the different ways of conducting the opening 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm sticking to 47, and that's it." I understand why you say Petrushka, and jumping in. Had the person already rehearsed it when you jumped in?
No, it was not really a jumping in. It was a project actually with the CBSO, which I have to say they were wonderful and they helped me so much. But was like a concert that had to be repeated after it was played a couple of weeks before. But I never conducted the work myself, so it was a very, very tricky situation, which I couldn't have never done if the orchestra is not by your side. So it was in a way very nice. Because I remember everybody being very supportive. Like, don't worry, we know this very well, and it's just you trust us, we trust you, we go. It was great, but still, in your system, it's like, but I haven't done a rehearsal of the piece. We have to go and deliver this. But so it's one of these British moments where you think, that cannot happen anywhere else.
Number 7, when traveling abroad to conduct, what item could you not leave home without?
This one I've been thinking about it, and I'm not really sure, but I would say my 3 pairs of shoes.
Absolutely.
I have my favorite things. I need specific shoes for certain things that make me feel in a place. And when I have problems with the suitcase and it doesn't fit, I don't feel comfortable. So I made big decisions to put away important stuff, but put the shoes.
Do you know, all the way back, and I think it was episode 4, Jack Van Steen, I think, gave the answer shoes. And I know, having chatted to John Wilson on many occasions away from a microphone, I remember him saying to me early on, I had a problem with plantar fasciitis, which is a problem with the sole of your feet.
Okay.
And he said, you can't be a conductor without having wonderfully comfortable shoes, and you've got to sort your feet out.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely right. And you know, you want to be able to spend your off time away in a comfortable pair of shoes. You want to be rehearsing in a pair of shoes that you're not worried about.
Beautiful ones, comfy,
and
beautiful,
then you don't want to be putting on rock hard, stiff leather concert shoes either. You know, that's a absolutely perfectly valid answer. And I haven't had it for a very long time, so good. Thank you.
Good, nice.
Number 8. What is the one thing you would change about being a conductor?
That's also a difficult one, but it's the same thing that I consider a very good part of the job. It's the same thing I will say it's one of the bad parts of it, which is the nomadic life we have. I'm always interested or curious to know exactly, because you can talk about in the times when, for example, Simon Rattle was a lot in Birmingham, and they will rehearse week after week, and they will do things with time. It's easy to say, but I'm curious to know exactly how did it feel in the time, no? Right? Or also the fact that amateur organizations work with the same person for a long period. Of course, we all know our jobs are temporary, and there is always this point where relationship doesn't work anymore and you have to go. That's fine, no? But this sometimes weekly work, or even less than a week, which is only that week and might not happen again until the next 3 years. I find it sometimes a little bit sad, especially when you connect with a group of people and you think, oh, it would be wonderful to reinforce this relationship, but it's not going to happen, no? And that's, I find it's a little pity, but at the same time, the fact that we travel and we meet so many people, we have so many chances at the same time, no? It's not like, okay, that's what you got and you have to have it for life. No. So it's at the same time the best and the worst thing for me, I would say.
You bring up an interesting point, or two, in fact. Yes, it's difficult when, let's talk about amateurs first. I've conducted the same amateur orchestra now for 21 years in Birmingham, but we had a year break because it got to the point, I remember saying in a rehearsal, look, you're not listening to me anymore. I said, but the problem is, what's worse than that is you're not listening to yourselves either. And so we had a year off, and then I went back and the next thing I conduct, which is 2 weeks tomorrow, we start rehearsals and it's with that orchestra again, and I enjoy working with them. But we needed a little break. I was playing in the orchestra when Simon was, I joined in 90. Well, I started playing in 91, joined in 92, so he was already 12 years into the job. The longest he was ever with us, really, if you take touring out, was three weeks, really.
Okay, but it's a quite long period.
It is.
What
exactly.
we do nowadays.
Yeah. But I have to say, after those 3 weeks, we were quite ready for somebody else's voice. Of course, lots of improvements were made, but then, and I think he would agree with that. I think, I still hope one day to chat to him about it on this podcast, but I think he would agree with me that he needed to go and speak to somebody else, and we needed to hear somebody else's voice.
Of course.
And then you also bring up the other thing is that we're similar in the fact that we spend most of our lives, but you and I, actually going out and guest conducting a lot, and we have orchestras that we really regularly go to. I mean, you're a principal guest in Milan, so you've got a contract with an orchestra. But yeah, you might go there. There's an orchestra I go to fairly recently. I conducted them in February. They gave a concert in February, and before the concert, I said, it's been a lovely 2 weeks with you. I'll leave you with Happy Christmas and see you in the new year. And they were like, oh, no. I know. Well, that's the next time I'm coming. But I would happily have stayed for another week or two. But that's just what it's like. I recently got re-invited by an orchestra, but because they've already filled their diary up, I won't be going back there until season 2024-25. But at least I've been re-invited. But that's exactly what it's like. You're right. That you can't just demand to go and see these people, however much they want to see you and you want to see them. There are other diary commitments, and
because in a way we live this real life situation where you meet someone and the chemistry happens now. It doesn't happen in 25. Happens now.
Yeah, exactly.
But the system doesn't allow certain relationships to develop in the moment, because it's not how it works. At least in the let's say in the professional level.
Yeah.
And
Unless you get a principal guest thing like you, which guarantees you so many weeks per year,
but,
and then
but
you
still,
can work on that.
Yeah. But still, I also say, because in a way, my principal guest is not finally something very intense, because it's like we don't appreciate these intense relationships anymore either. That's my little comment in a way, but it's how it works. And there are so many good parts about our job that we just have to adapt also ourselves and do things.
Very true. Now, talking of jobs, we've both had two. I was a violinist and now a conductor. You were a professional percussionist and now a conductor. But I'm going to ask you, is there another profession other than your own that you would have liked to have attempted?
Many. I would like to have been a painter.
Are you talking artistic painter or a painter and decorator?
Artistic. But I have to say, in COVID, I tried and it's not my thing. But I would love to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how many people have said that they would like to be an artist before. I mean, it's very, very similar to conducting. It's rather, lonely occupation.
But I'm in my mind. I'm very funny sometimes, and I try to put myself into the situation to do whatever I had to do to survive. So I could do many things. I think I'm not worried about that. If it's I wanted to be a photographer also, but let's say this is all artistic related life. But if not, sport is not my thing. I really try, but no. I mean, intention is not the only thing it counts. Sport it's not my thing. I would avoid an office, that's for sure. I would avoid an office. But I could sell stuff, or I don't know.
If the world were to end tonight, what would be your choice of final meal and drink?
Final meal and drink is a very serious question, but it will be homemade paella by my mom, of course.
Yes.
But specifically a winter paella with artichokes and faba beans.
Ooh.
Which makes the paella a little bit dark.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the black, but dark green. Oh, that's beautiful.
I've never heard of a winter paella.
That's the thing. If you ever come to Valencia, you have to tell me.
I will.
I'll make my magic. not me. I'm not a good cooker, but I like to eat very well. No, paella is a way of living. So
oh God,
there is not only one. Depending if it's summer, if it's winter, if it's in the beach, in the mountain, it all changes. So but my specific, the one I really love the most is the winter one with artichokes when they are there in the season of the artichokes, and faba beans. That's really fantastic.
And what do you wash it down with?
With a beer. I'm a beer type. After so many years in Belgium, I got to really love many kind of beers. So Abbey beer, a beautiful Abbey beer with foam over, and then it.
Sounds great. As another beer drinker, sounds wonderful. I knew it'd be good chatting with you because, of course, we know each other from days in Birmingham, and we have quite a lot in common, as I've alluded to throughout the podcast. So it's been a joy, and I hope very much that we can see each other in the flesh and we'll share a beer. And if I'm ever in Valencia, I will be taking you up on the offer of a winter paella. Thank you, Jaume.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's been very, very nice to chat and so make a little reconnection. And I hope to see you in Birmingham soon also, or somewhere in the world. Who knows?
A Mic on the Podium was devised and produced by Michael Seal, with music by Ben Dawson. Next time, I chat with a conductor who was born and raised in America, but now spends a lot of her time here in the United Kingdom. She founded her own orchestra in London in 1999. She won the Eduardo Mata conducting competition in 2009, and in 2019 she became the chief conductor of the Uppsala Chamber Orchestra in Sweden. But until then, bye-bye.